So in the mid-1970s was a weird time for the big screen and the small screen because of the importance and the money-making efforts of The Exorcist. You were seeing a lot of A-level horror movies and B-level movies showing up. Now, we talked previously about some of the ABC horror movies, including Satan's Triangle, starring Kim Novak. But this one was kind of beyond the beyond, because the guy that was involved with Dark Shadows, Dan Curtis, and also the great Richard Matheson, the writer, got really involved in this movie, and for a lot of people, it scared them shitless in 1975. It made a certain doll probably the scariest doll in the history of horror movies, and that's saying a lot. And today we're going to be talking about the cult classic for many people, Trilogy of Terror. Now, Robert Mendoza, one of the followers of our channel, I talked about a Helen Mirren thriller anthology episode she was in, said, you know, Jeff, why don't you do something, a Trilogy of Terror, because that was kind of the style of the 1970s, where different attempts at gothic and graphic horror were showing up on TV. Now, this was a anthology horror film that was broadcast on the ABC Tuesday Movie of the Week. Now, at the time, most of ABC's movies of the week were in that 70 to 74 minute range. So technically, it was 3 Twilight Zone Night Gallery episodes back to back to back. Now, all 3 of the episodes of the anthology starred the incomparable Karen Black. Karen had been a major star in growth. Some of the Nicholson movies, Easy Rider, 5 Easy Pieces, Nashville, all that. She was becoming one of the most popular actors of her generation. But a lot of people felt she was typecast towards horror movies because of her appearance in this production. Now again, 3 segments, each based on unrelated short stories by the great Richard Matheson. The first follows a college professor who seeks excitement with her students. The second is about twin sisters who have a bizarre relationship. And the third focuses on a woman terrorized by a Zuni fetish doll in her apartment. Black stars in all 3 segments, and might as well say she plays 4 roles, as she plays dual roles in the second. Now, first aired on ABC Movie of the Week, March 4th, 75. Black initially turned down the project, but reconsidered when her then husband, Robert Burton, was cast in the first segment, Julie. Now, a television film sequel titled Trilogy of Terror 2, written and also directed by Dan Curtis, was released in 96. Now, Dan Curtis, very deft direction. He had little to work with the Dark Shadows, great acting, but, you know, minimal budget, but this movie really brought the terror. Now, in the first episode, Julie, Chad, Robert Burton, is a college student with a crush on his English teacher, Julie Eldridge, again played by Black. During one class, Chad is distracted by Julie's thighs. She sits on her desk, and he daydreams about her. He reveals his fantasies to his friend Eddie, played by Jim Storm, but Eddie discouraged him from becoming romantically involved with teachers. Later that evening, when Julie's undressing in her room, Chad watches her through a window. The next day, he asks Julie out. When she refuses, but she later accepts the offer. Now, during the date at a drive-in theater, Chad spikes Julie's drink, rendering her unconscious, and drives her to a motel. After checking them in as husband and wife, he photographs her in a variety of sexually provocative positions. He then pulls up to her house as she regains consciousness, saying that she had fallen asleep during the movie. Now, after developing the photographs in his darkroom, he shows the pictures to Julie. She is furious and threatens to call the police. Chad blackmails Julie into submitting to his romantic attentions. After several weeks of this, Julie announces the game is over. She reveals that it was actually she who had manipulated Chad in an elaborate role play of her own design. Do you really think that dull little mind of yours could possibly have conceived any of the rather dramatic experience we've shared? Why do you think you suddenly had an overwhelming desire to see what I look like under all those clothes? Don't feel bad. I always got bored after a while. Chad realized that Julie has poisoned his drink, and then he collapses. Julie drags him into the darkroom, where she sets fire to the offending photographs. Chad's death is later reported in local media as a house fire. Julie adds a newspaper story to a scrapbook of articles depicting students who had similar fates. There's a knock on the door, and another young, handsome student, played by the greatly handsome and talented Gregory Harrison, in need of a tutor, enters. Typical Curtis and Matheson. Now the second one, Millicent and Therese. This tale of sibling rivalry focuses on sisters Millicent, a repressed, unattractive, and prudish brunette, and Therese, or Teresa, a worldly, seductive, and free-spirited blonde. Both roles are played by Karen Black. Millicent has determined that Therese is evil and plans a voodoo talesman to kill her. When Millicent's friend Dr. Ramsey enters the house, he finds Therese dead on her bedroom floor with the doll next to her, and Millicent is nowhere to be found. Dr. Ramsey reveals, as the family doctor, that Therese and Millicent are the same person. Therese suffered from multiple personality disorder, brought on by the fact that Therese slept with her father and subsequently killed her mother, and Millicent was an alternate personality with a repressed sexuality to cope with the horror of her actions. The recent death of her father unhinged her further, and the murder was actually a form of suicide. Now the third part, called Amelia, was filmed like a one-woman play with Karen Black as the only actor. It was also the only film of the three whose script was written by the original author of the story, Richard Matheson. Amelia is based on the 1969 short story Prey. The other two are based on stories by Matheson as well, but their screenplays were written by someone else. Now Amelia lives alone in a high-rise apartment building. She returns home after a fateful shopping spree, carrying a package containing a wooden fetish doll, crafted in the form of a misshapen aboriginal warrior equipped with pointy sharp teeth and a spear. A scroll comes with the doll, claiming that the doll contains the actual spirit of a Zuni hunter named He Who Kills, and that the gold chain adorning the doll keeps the spirit trapped within. As Amelia makes a call to her mother, we learn that she suffers from her mother's overbearing behavior. She struggles to justify her independence and cancels her plans for the evening by claiming she has a date. As Amelia leaves the room, we see that the Zuni fetish doll golden chain has somehow fallen off. Later, Amelia is planning dinner using a carving knife. Never ends well. She enters the darkening living room and realizes the doll is not on the coffee table. Amelia hears a noise in the kitchen, and when she investigates, the knife is missing. Returning to the living room, she is suddenly attacked by the doll, which stabs at her ankles viciously. She attempts to flee, but the doll chases her around the apartment. In the bathroom, Amelia envelops the doll in a towel and attempts futilely to drown it in the bathtub. She later traps it in a suitcase, but the doll begins cutting a circular hole through the top of the suitcase with the butcher knife. After several more vicious attacks, Amelia managed to hurl the doll in the oven, where it catches fire. She holds the oven door while she listens to the doll howling and screaming as it burns, and, whilst black smoke billows out, she waits until the screaming eventually stops. Opening the oven to ensure that the doll is dead, she is struck by some force that pushes her backward, and from which she emits a blood-curdling scream. At some point after that, the audience sees Amelia from behind, plays another call to her mother. Now, in a calm, controlled voice, she apologizes for her behavior during the previous call and invites her mother to come for dinner. She then rips the bolt from her front door and crouches down low in an animalistic manner, carrying a large carving knife. She is now seen frontally, stabbing at the floor with the weapon, grinning fairly and revealing the horrific teeth of the Zuni fetish doll, whose spirit now inhabits her body. Now, Frank Welker, great voice actor for animation, plays the voice of the Zuni doll in part 3. But of course, there's a lot of key actors. John Carlin, well known from Dark Shadows. George Gaines also was in Millicent and Therese, and again Jim Storm and Robert Burton. Now, all three of the segments, again, based on Richard Matheson stories. Now, William F. Nolan adapted Julian, Millicent, and Therese, and the movie took a little while to film. It was shot on location in Hollywood in winter of 74-75, and eventually March 4th, 75, it appeared. Now, critical response is mixed. The Boston Globe praised Karen Black's tour de force performance in the film upon its original airing. Black later said in published reports she felt the film led to genre typecasting, forcing her to accept many roles in B-grade horror films following the film's release. She stated, "I think this little movie took my life and put it on a path that it didn't even belong in." Now, most critics at the time either got it or didn't. Slant Magazine gave it 3.5 out of 4. Some people found it a lackluster story, and a lot of people feel that the third segment is the strongest because doll trying to kill a human being is pretty big, and it was kind of parodied on The Simpsons many years ago as well. But part 3, if you're scared of dolls, man, that's not a show to watch. Now, some people felt it was a psychological torment movie and not really a terror movie. Now, TV Guide only gave it 2 out of 4 stars at the time, and but Megan Navarro from Bloody Disgusting, which is read quite heavy worldwide, included Trilogy of Terror in her list of 10 scariest made-for-TV horror movies, praising the final segment as keeping the film forever at the forefront of made-for-television movie memory. Now, Anchor Bay, which was involved in a lot of obscure releases, put out the film on DVD on August 24th, 1999, and on VHS July 11, 2000, kind of bizarre, on DVD then VHS. Now, a special edition DVD was released in 2006, then a Blu-ray by Kino Lorber Studio Classes in 2018, and both the Blu-ray and DVD are 4K. Now, the cult following of Trilogy of Terror, it would depend who you're talking to. It's much better internationally. Within Canadian horror scenes, is not as big, but what they call the gore horror of later on, it wasn't as bloody because TV movies couldn't get rid of blood. But again, Karen Black became an overnight sensation for that cult horror following, even though she had done great parts in movies previously and after. Now, the Zuni doll from the segment Amelia has been called by some in the know and published reports as one of the scariest dolls in movie history. In 2011, Complex Magazine named Trilogy of Terror the 4th greatest TV film of all time, while MeTV deemed it as the scariest TV film of all time in 2016. Now, here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. The ABC made-for-TV movie of the weeks of the 1970s rarely show up on regular television because, obviously, in-house productions. But the horror genre, like we talked about the Satan's Triangle as well, there was a lot of interest in the horror genre because of the comeback where key dramatic actors and actresses were put in the horror movie. Now, this came out before Omen, right? And right after The Exorcist. So again, there's aspects of Satanism in this movie, which I don't want to get into because obviously, I don't want to encourage it. But if you're a Dan Curtis fan, that type of terror is for you. And if you love what he's done, and Dan Curtis very underrated as a director, I always thought, because what he wanted was always on the screen. Now, there was a sequel called Trilogy of Terror 2, which came out in 1996. Again, it was directed by Dan Curtis and starred Lizette Anthony. So very quickly, just to recap, this was another anthology movie. The episode where the Zuni doll comes back, it was in the episode He Who Kills, when one of the museum security guards is reading a Dark Shadows comic book and enthuses about how he used to rush home from school to watch it. Dan Curtis again created Dark Shadows. Now, the He Who Kills episode, again, where the Zuni doll comes back, and again, there leaves it open for another sequel. Now, in this movie, Jeffrey Lewis is in there, Lizette Anthony, of course. So basically, a B-movie sequel to a B-movie concept. But I've never seen Trilogy of Terror, but the people that told me, like our friend Mr. Mendoza, they basically point to it as probably groundbreaking in Like, you know how Jamie Lee Curtis was typecast for a while? But before Jamie Lee Curtis, there was Karen Black. And you got to understand, she's playing 4 roles in this. And she has to act by herself with a freaky doll. So, and the thing is, about Trilogy of Terror, no disrespect, wasn't nominated for anything. Which is kind of bizarre, but it's the way it goes. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing with our look at the ABC movies of the week of the mid-1970s, let us know if the doll scared you shitless back in the day. Tell us why. But look at the picture of the doll, ladies and gentlemen. If you ever end up face-to-face with somebody who looks like that, just leave the house backwards. But Karen Black, you know, she's a luminous beauty. She's not your typical beauty. But that final scene with the Zuni doll in part 3, boys, oh boys, it must have been a good makeup artist and dentist to give her that teeth. That's all I can say. So thanks for listening. If you like what we're doing here, give us a like, comment, and subscribe. And don't be afraid of the dark. Little inside joke there. Have a good day. Bye.